Remember, change is a process that takes time and energy. Remember what Vice President Kamala Harris had to say, quote, change is never easy, but is always necessary. And I conclude by saying I encourage you to embrace the wisdom of science fiction author Octavia Butler. Quote, she says, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. So be patient and keep working on it as long as it takes. Make, quote, play the long game your mantra.
Hello and welcome to the Black Catholic Messenger Show, where we keep it Black and we keep it Catholic. My name is Nate Tanner Williams, and I am your host. And today we have with us two very special guests, Dr. John F. Leeke and his daughter, the wellness professional Ananda Leeke. And they are co-authors of a new book, American Change Agent, A Life and Legacy of Seeking Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion. We're so grateful to have you both on the show here today.
Glad to be here.
Happy to be here.
Wonderful. So I think we can get right into it. I want to first let you tell me about yourselves. Where do you come from? What do you do? And yeah, how did this book project come about?
Well, I'll start, Nate. I'm originally from Indianapolis, Indiana. However, I was raised in Washington, D.C., and that's where I went to elementary Catholic and a Catholic high school. But I went back to Indiana to attend college at Indiana State. It was Indiana State Teachers College when I entered. It is, of course, now Indiana State University. And I came back to D.C. for my first teaching position. And then a year later, I went to Flint, Michigan. And I was an elementary teacher there and also an elementary counselor. However, after 5 years, I came back to the Washington area because I was offered a job at the National Education Association, of which I worked there for 17 years. But in 1985, I made a decision to leave and start my own consulting firm, which is John F. Leeke Associates. And I did that for a bit over 30 years, retiring when I was getting into my mid to late 70s. And so I am now a fully retired person. However, I'm an author now.
Yes, indeed.
Awesome.
What about you, Ananda?
So I am Ananda Kiamsha Madelyn Cheryl Leeke. Long name. Parents named me Madelyn Cheryl Leeke. I am first and foremost a spiritual being, having a very real human experience in this body as Ananda Leeke. And I'm the daughter of Teresa and John Leeke. And I live on the occupied land of the Piscataway people in Washington, D.C. And so I am a daughter of the universe and the loving, wise, and well ancestors. I claim African, Indigenous, and European people. And I share my gifts in the world as a wellness professional that discovered wellness, mindfulness, self-care when I was a young lawyer and investment banker, and was stressed out and struggled tremendously. And through my own personal work with therapists and coaches, I saw how these holistic tools benefited my own life. So I decided to become certified in yoga, meditation, mindfulness, sound healing, Reiki, and so much more. And then as a writer, using my creative writing skills in the mix of all of that, and an author of 4 books now, one of which is the book American Change Agent with my dad. And what can I say? I'm in the sparkling and scintillating 60s. I'm 60, almost 61. And I am now a debut spoken word album publisher, songwriter, poet. I just released Thriving Mindfully as Teresa's Daughter. So that's my first debut spoken word album, celebrating over 30 years of poetry and healing work. So yeah, that's me.
Incredible. Well, since you shared that your name has changed since you were born, I'm so curious. What does Ananda mean?
Ananda is a Sanskrit word that means joy, God's eternal bliss. And it was a name that I adopted in my spiritual practices and then started using in my healing work and creative work when I turned 40. And then Kiamsha is a Swahili word that means that which awakens me. That was a word that I adopted back in 1992 when I discovered within myself a need to express my connection to the motherland, Africa. And that which awakens me refers to spirit, God, uh, and our ancestors, and how it awakens my entire life, but in particular my creativity.
Incredible. And how does your work, both of your work, connect to DEI? I already know the answer for you, Dr. Leek, but yeah, can you share about that? How this topic has become so central that you would both write a book about it?
Yeah. Well, let me say that actually, when I came to the NEA in 1968, I came to, at that point, to work on a special task force on urban education. It was a year-long project. Um, and at the end of that year, we produced a report called Schools of the Urban Crisis. And in that, of course, I began to get into very detailed and very academic areas that were trying to sort out what were some of the educational issues in urban America. And a lot of that had to do with the fact that minorities, particularly people of color, were being shortchanged in many ways. Uh, and so that led me into then the year after the report was presented, approved, and then the NEA said we need to start to try and implement some of the recommendations. And as a result, I was one of the staff who was responsible for uh, doing getting those recommendations uh, out there. And so that next year, I was in the field, meaning that I was out working with local teacher associations and people in the community. And in a year, um, I helped to triple the budget and created a great deal of projects. And I, 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 I like to think that people often said when I would show up and I'd be doing things, "You work for the NEA?" And I would say, "Oh, yes, I do," and told them the reasons that I was doing the work. And so then shortly after that year, the director who was sort of my mentor because he hired me, and then he did a lot to help me to move on and progress in the organization. And as he moved up to be the director of the uh, Center for Human Relations. And of course, I went right along there with him. And for the next few years, I did all kinds of projects under the banner of human relations. A lot had to do with increasing the numbers of minorities within the organization. We worked on issues of desegregation, racism, sexism, um, and many other human quote things that normally come under human relations. Uh, so that's when I really began, um, and that was before the term diversity was ever mentioned.
Yeah, that's what I was wondering. It's like DEI was not the term of choice at the time, right?
No, no, no. We were during that time we were talking about issues of race and gender, particularly racism, sexism, and I began also um, doing some things for other organizations as I did work on the outside of the NEA and developed a fairly decent, uh, you know, background and began to connect with others who were doing some of that work. But I'll stop there because that's kind of Nate. That's kind of how I began to move into quote what we now call diversity.
What about you, Ananda?
So this project started with a letter that my dad wrote to um, to his children. I think it was back in 2009, right after 2008, 2009, right after President Barack Obama won the White House, and he wanted to share aspects of his life, is from being born in Indianapolis to being raised in Washington, D.C., educated at St. Augustine's Catholic Church, the oldest Black Catholic church in Washington, by the Oblate Sisters, and going to Archbishop Carroll High School, which was the first interracial high school in the Washington, D.C. area. And it was done right at the time of Brown v. Board education, even before that, um, and how his life, his marriage to my mother, who's another Black Catholic educator and a musician and a liturgical director, Teresa B. Garden with St. Joseph's Catholic Church in Landover, or Bowie, where it's Largo now, has changed.
Yeah.
How his entire life, raising 4 children, educating a number of us in the Catholic schools in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, um, and his work as an entrepreneur, his work at the National Education Association, his entire life uh, as an activist, senior digital digital senior citizen later, in his 70s and now 80s, how he made an impact or how he is making an impact because he's still here. Um, and I encouraged him to think about it as a book. Um, and then during the pandemic, we really got to work on um, editing what he had started. I mean, it took him, how many years did it get you? Did it take?
I'm saying if in terms of from the time I really kind of got started until we published, finally self-published in this year, I would say 15 years.
Yeah. And not necessarily consistently,
No,
was it different points? Because we're, life is life and we're all living. I would say this, I was brought in 2020 during the pandemic because most of us had a lot of time. And we used Zoom, um, and in-person sessions to take what he created as a draft and massage it into what it is now. His memoir.
That's interesting for various reasons because I know the faith communities that you're talking about. I'm also from Indiana. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
And so
Where, where
I've
in?
been I grew up in Evansville.
Oh, yes, I know Evansville. I did a few things down in Evansville too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, yeah. When I was doing some uh, consulting in my firm and all, we did a couple projects in Evansville and also in South Bend, Indiana, Fort Wayne,
Mm.
Indiana. Yeah.
But even though you moved away, you still
Yep.
could come back. Wow. Well, you know, that connection of things that I'm familiar with makes me wonder, how did those faith communities in particular influence what you later did in the DEI world, Dr. Leeke? Is there a connection there?
Sure. Yeah, because first and foremost, I really consider me clearly a man of faith. Um, I once that I and I'm a convert. I'm not a cradle Catholic. My wife Teresa, however, is a cradle Catholic. Um, but there were just lots of things that happened along in my development, okay, that uh, in elementary school and the kind of the direction and support that I had from the Oblate Sisters of Providence. And then when I was in high school and I was with the Augustinians, they were in charge of uh, Archbishop Carroll High School. Uh, I certainly developed a whole notion of the importance of recognizing and accepting uh, all people, and at the same time, I also learned pretty quickly that there were things that, as a black student, later as a black educator, and clearly always as a black man, um, I knew that there were things that I was not allowed to do. Uh,
Mm,
and at the same point in time, I began in my 20s to start to do things that would make my life better, but also to make other people's lives much better, which, as we probably talk later, talk about a few of the very specific efforts that I've made that have made a major difference in the lives of many of my brothers and sisters.
thank you for that. And Ananda, for you, what would you say the connection is between wellness and DEI? I know I heard when you were describing your background that you former attorney and your previous career experience has involved a lot of stress, and
Mhm.
I'm sure part of that is societal stress.
Yes.
So how does that sort of inclusion mindset connect to wellness or the lack of wellness for many people of color, women, and other oppressed people?
Well, I think everybody that is here today on this podcast and those that are people of color, most of us can can attest to what it means to be othered, uh, especially when we're the global majority. Uh, but here in the United States, we are and have been for over 400 years uh, placed in systematic, oppressive, uh, environments. Just breathing creates stress in this society, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. Even the best of us that practice wellness and self care and mindfulness, we all are impacted by it. And I would say everyone in society um, is impacted by it, whether we acknowledge it or not. And so, one of the ways that um, we can navigate the stress and the struggle and all of the different things that are coming at us is by choosing our birthright of self care, self love, self compassion, and so on. Uh, Slowing down and recognizing that uh, no matter what you call your higher power, the we were all created to live well and to take care of ourselves. And we are all created out of love. That's my belief. Uh, and so that love begins with self first, accepting that you have that love. And there is a higher power, you want to call angels, ancestors. We're not going to get into the different ways that people um, navigate their spirituality and express it. But, but that is something that is inherent in all of us. And it is our choice to nurture that. And I can only say from the last 30 plus years of my life that uh, I wouldn't be here if I didn't wake up every day and choose in some way, some small, medium, or big way to care for myself. Uh, that's a piece of it. And in caring for myself, and I say this to communities and clients that I support in organizations, when one person is able to care for themselves, they can care for others. And you have energy, you have the capacity to show up and do the work of diversity, equality, and inclusion. You have the fuel. Can't run on empty. It's like the oxygen that they say on an airplane, it's yours first before you help someone else. That's for me, that's the connection. I mean, in order to do the work of diversity, equality, and inclusion, I submit we need to be well as much as we can.
Absolutely. And it seems like right now in America, we may be in a moment of, you know, the plane is shaking. The masks have come out of the ceiling. We seem like we're in that moment right now. What do you guys how do we get here? I feel like Dr. Leek, with your experience in this field dating back to even before it was called DEI, the work has been going on for a long time. So how do we get to this point now where it seems like we are moving backwards? And what can we do in this moment and as we seek wellness and wholeness?
Yeah. Well, Nate, I think we need to understand that uh, we need to pay attention to history because what is going on today has gone on before. In many ways, very much the same. All of the things that the Trump administration, essentially the Republican Party, the right wing, uh, what is happening now is a reaction to the progress that this country has made to make it a true democracy and a nation, which very often now we talk about, we are a nation for the most part of immigrants.
Mm.
Everybody that is here, with the exception of the Native American, either came here or was brought here. Some came here by choice, others by being it as for black people or people of color, uh, we were brought here as slaves and have been struggling for literally 400 years to try to be fully recognized as American citizens with all the rights and privileges of anyone else.
Mhm.
So we need to understand that and understand. And I talk about this in terms of the fact that for us as Black people, uh, we were freed from slavery. Now, some of us we got ourselves out of slavery. We escaped. My ancestors escaped slavery. Now, for me, I didn't have to escape slavery. My ancestors took care of that. And so I've had that opportunity to do things because even after the emancipation, we then went through a period called Reconstruction.
Mhm.
And white people quickly recognized they need to get this thing back in place. And they then passed all the Jim Crow laws. Okay, that's what I'm talking about by knowing our history and seeing the pattern. And yet, because we are so resilient, we were able to overcome all that Jim Crow stuff. And in the 50s, we began then to pass what we now call the civil rights legislation. But once again, in a fairly short period of time, the white society found a way to try and restrict us, do away with us. Okay. And yet we have fought back from that and to be at the place where this country elected the first Black man. Okay. And not only did they elect him once, they elected him twice. Now they said, we ain't having this. We're going to stop this stuff now. And that's when the right wing started their organizing, which now, if you read their document, they are doing everything that was in that document under the leadership of Donald Trump.
What document are you referring to?
That's their 20, I think it's called the
Project 2025.
Yeah, Project
Okay.
2025. And if you read that, all you got to do is read it, and you can see all of these things that he's been doing, particularly since January.
Mhm.
Now, fortunately, again, people are resisting. If we look at the way that people have been protesting, and it's interesting for me that in the past, the protests were primarily from people of color. But if you look today at who's out there in these marches, standing on the streets with the signs and protesting and saying this isn't right, that what's going on with immigration isn't right, what's going on with all these other things, that's white people.
Mm.
I believe, Nate, they have come to realize that's not the America that they want America to be. So that's why I say how important it is. We must know our history and not forget it and look at the pattern that keeps repeating itself. But let me stop. I get on a ramp and I have to slow myself down.
I'm curious. People of my generation were not around for the civil rights movement, for the period before the progress that we made. I was born into an America that, you know, I know there's racism. I experienced racism, but I didn't know what it was like during Jim Crow. I didn't know all those battles that were fought. Can you tell me about some of the work that you did, in the 20th century, um, mid to late 20th century that, people of my generation just would not know about. No, they wouldn't know about the issue that needed to be solved, and they wouldn't know how it was combated.
Yeah. Let me give you an example of one of the things that I did early on in my uh, career at the NEA. And this has to do with inclusion. Um, the National Education Association is an organization essentially of classroom teachers. And it has not always been an organization in which black teachers and white teachers were part. Historically, there were two separate organizations. The American Teachers Association, that was the Black Teachers Association. And it was primarily in the South, in the area of the Georgia, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, Texas, Arkansas, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Maryland. Now, the two organizations function very much the same and were structured very much the same. But the two organizations their leadership began to talk with each other. And in the 60s, there was finally a merger of the National Education Association and the American Teachers Association.
Mhm.
It was not easy. It was a difficult task, and a few of the states bucked it.
Mm.
Mississippi, Louisiana, and Georgia were three of the ones who said no, no, but eventually, through more discussion, more negotiation, and so forth, the thing became complete. But let me just give you an indication of what uh, went on, because in the state associations, all of those states that I mentioned, they had state headquarters. They had a headquarter building.
Mhm.
They had an executive director. They had a staff. That was also true of the white state associations. When they began to merge, and this happened also, I'll give you another little thing, but at any rate, as they began to talk about the merger and there were no black state association offices that remained. Even the ones that were newer, so that in the merger, it was always favorably going to the white. And in most
Mm.
instances, the new executive director of a given state association was a white person.
Mm.
The assistant or the associate exec would be the black person who was formerly a state exec in the black association. Got it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now you got that. Then later on, we started having the notion of uh, desegregation in the schools. And again, the fight occurred more so in the South, same southern states.
Just to clarify, so the two NEA and the ATA merged before the desegregation
Oh,
crisis.
yes.
Okay.
No, excuse me. No. Desegregation came essentially in 54. The associations merged in the mid 60s because in 1968, the first Black person, a Black woman, Elizabeth Kuntz, became the NEA president. Okay. So as I was just saying, this sort of the same kind of arrangements and dynamics occurred with the school desegregation because they closed many of the Black schools in the South. They did away with so many Black administrators. They did away with many Black teachers. And later, when the schools were, quote, desegregated and maybe to a certain extent integrated, many of the white teachers didn't know how to handle Black students, and they saw them as disciplinary problems. And that's when we began to get a lot of Black kids being kicked out, suspended, because they were, quote, not ready for school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm.
That's what we don't. So when you say you didn't know about that, no, you didn't know about that because you might not even have been born yet. Because I'm not absolutely certain of your age, but so
I was not born yet.
yeah. So there is so much that's out there, and this information is available. All people got to do is to start to do a little research, do some reading, because lots of people now have written about that.
Fascinating. Ananda, I'm wondering, one of the critiques I hear on the DEI issue is that um, it doesn't actually center Black people or even people of color, but that the biggest beneficiaries of it are white women. That's something I hear all the time from some Black people. What would you say about that, and why do we sometimes forget the issue of discrimination against women in the fight for diversity, equity, and inclusion?
That's man, that's like a loaded question and not one that um I have personal opinions but not backed up by research. We live in
Your
a
personal opinion. I
yeah,
have no issue with
and I'll just say this: we live in a very this system that we live in has been constructed to do just what it's doing. It wasn't made for us. That's my position. Uh, and the pieces of the DEI that have been put in place and that have been leveraged to support um, more white women than people of color, that's that's intentional. That's strategic.
it.
And even the stripping of it, it's all a part of the plan in Project 2025. And I don't want to give a lot of time to what is happening in the news because we're all bombarded by that. What I want to say is that um, there are DEI programs that um, have supported people of color and women of color, specifically Black women. Uh, we're at a place right now where most of that is being stripped away. What can we do where we are? Uh, I think what we can do is we can realize that we can be a change agent. And I want to ask my dad to tell us, based on one of the lessons learned in his book on page 443, what is a change agent. And I think, John, I call my dad Jay. If you got a copy of the book handy, show us the copy of it and read a little bit from that because I think it sets it 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 serves as a reminder that in the midst of all of this, we can always we've been through stuff. we come from people that have been through stuff. And I don't use it as a badge of, oh, we're so super bad, we can handle it. I use
Mhm.
it as a testament to the ancestors the shoulders that we stand on. And as I have said to people in the past when they ask me my position, well, what do you think about what's happening? I said, well, I've got to reach within and I've got to do my own personal work. But this isn't the Ma'afa. This isn't the middle passage. Okay. We come from people who survived that. So if they can survive that and thrive, we can dig deep and all recognize that we're change agents. And so I'm going to let my dad define what that change agent is based on what we've written in the book so folks can really understand where we're coming from.
Yeah, the point that in the latter part of the book, and I make several recommendations or lessons learned, and the one that she was referencing was you can be a change agent, and and in a lot of ways, I say here that a change agent is a person who is committed to making things better in an organization and community. Now, I have been a change agent since my early days as a teacher and guidance counselor in Flint, Michigan. When I worked as an NEA staffer and consultant with my own firm and EYCA, I was able to make organizational change within the institutions. In addition, I have leveraged my change agent skills to improve my civic and church communities. Now, if you're interested in being a change agent, identify how you can use your skills and expertise to improve the organization you work in and the communities you live and serve in. Remember, change is a process that takes time and energy. Remember what Vice President Kamala Harris had to say, quote, change is never easy, but is always necessary. And I conclude by saying, I encourage you to embrace the wisdom of science fiction author Octavia Butler. Quote, she says, all that you touch, you change. All that you change changes you. The only lasting truth is change. So be patient and keep working on it as long as it takes. Make, quote, play the long game your mantra.
And I
That's,
think
go ahead, Puff.
I think that's where we have to be. We have to center ourselves in ourselves, being grounded in whatever faith practice you believe in, taking care of yourself, and then looking around at what can we do in our communities first and foremost. Take what is already here, like there are models already there. There are organizations that are already in place, or create your own, but become a part of something. Look at how we consume, look at where we spend our money, all of these different things. We have more power than what we think we do. It just means that we have to be, quote, uncomfortable. We might have to be, not might, inconvenienced compared to what our lives have been. And I'm not saying stop shopping at this place. Everyone has something that they can do. They can contribute to being a change agent. It's not that you have to wear a t-shirt. It's not that you have to get online and announce what you're doing. Pick one thing right where you are. One person too to impact. Doesn't have to be 10 million people, 10 people, 15,000 people. But you have the power to be a change agent. Um, and that's how We make diversity, equality, and inclusion a reality. Let's look at what matters to us. Let's define our worlds. Let's look at what kind of world do we want to live in and start moving from that place, in addition to all of the other things that we're having to do to navigate all the BS that's being thrown at us. Because I'm not trying to act like this stuff isn't happening, because we got to deal with this on multiple levels. But first and foremost, that's what I'm feeling and thinking, and how I'm operating, or I choose to operate. I try to operate in.
That's powerful stuff. I think it's a necessary shift in perspective. And as a journalist, I know often I'm focused on the news headline, the tragic nature of the present reality. But
Mhm.
how do you inspire people to see forward past that to something that can be in the future? And as you said, as you both said, that's what our ancestors did. And in many ways, that's what you both have done uh, in very unique ways, in very necessary ways. And so, since you've shown us the book, I want you to share, where can we find the book? How can people get this book and start their own journey towards being a change agent?
They can go to anandaleeke.com/Dr. John. The book is available on all platforms, including Barnes and Noble and so many others. The popular ones. Notice I don't name some names, but it's where you can find it. You can purchase it directly if you want to support two African American authors and self publishers and entrepreneurs called Dr. John Leeke and Ananda Leeke. Purchase the book from Ingram Spark directly and go to our website, anandaleeke.com/Dr. John. Click on that button. And when you buy from Ingram Spark, we make more of a profit. So that we're asking people to do that if they can. And it makes for a great gift for yourself, a holiday gift, a winter read, whenever you watch this podcast, to read it. And I also encourage people to tell their stories. Tell your family story, document it in some way. It doesn't have to be over 400 pages like us. You could take the time to write in a Word document and turn it into a PDF. Document the stories, tell our stories, because Nate, one of the beautiful things that you're doing with the Black Catholic Messenger is you're providing a platform that inspires, informs, and educates people about different people's perspectives, what's happening in the world, and all of that storytelling, all of that reporting, all of that sharing of information helps us embrace being a change agent in our own lives, because people get to see. Sometimes people need to see and hear someone else doing it.
In fact, in several of the events where we have presented the book at book readings and so forth, there had been close to a dozen people who have come up to us and have said, "Oh, wow, I I've got to start putting my stuff together. We got a lot of information, and your book gives us a template as to how we can tell our family history." And so just hearing folks, say what the coming and listening to us and seeing the book, buying the book, uh, it has stimulated them or has motivated them to take care of telling their story in whatever manner that they choose to tell that story.
That's incredible. And just for our listeners who are only going to hear audio, I just want to make sure they get this website. That's NDALEEKE.com/DRJOHN. That is where you can find this new book, American Change Agent, A Life and Legacy of Seeking Diversity, Equality, and Inclusion by Dr. John F. Leeke and Ananda Kiamsha Madelyn Leeke. And I want to thank both of them for coming on to the Black Catholic Messenger Show today to share their experience, their wisdom, and their challenge to all of us. So thank you both for being here.
Well,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Nate.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in to the Black Catholic Messenger Show, where we keep it Black and we keep it Catholic. As you know, Black Catholic Messenger is your source for independent, nonprofit news of interest to African American Catholics. During these final days of 2025, we ask that you consider a tax-deductible donation to BCM, and you can find more information about that on blackcatholicmessenger.org/donate. We thank you for your support over these 5 years that we have been at this work, and we pray that it will continue for many, many more years. Again, thank you for listening to the show, and have a great holiday season.